You know how many houses they are building in Arizona
Hold
with
on, let
all
me put
this
in my earphones,
development?
Dr. Francine. I couldn't quite hear what you said.
Yeah, because she's soft.
What did she say?
She's asking
That
whether you have any idea how many houses were built in Arizona, I
in
think.
Arizona is building houses like there was no water shortage. And that is a serious issue. I just saw a development project that had been okayed for Arizona that had a lake as an amenity.
Okay, Dr. Francine, I think you are still a bit too low in your volume, so maybe later on when you are able to speak louder, then you can repeat your
Okay.
question again. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Tyler.
Water as a luxury.
Yes.
Luxurious water. Okay. Which, so now we go into the tech headlines. I did the air horn, right? So the first story today, happy November 1st, 2 months left of the year. Can you believe it? We're almost to 2023. Let's not count our chickens, though. The first story is from Bloomberg. They say they have sources that Twitter froze some staff access to content moderation and policy enforcement tools, raising worries about misinformation spike before the U.S. midterms. And then Yoel Roth, who's the head of security, who's in charge of these issues over at Twitter, took to Twitter himself to do a deep dive on the whole issue in a really admirably straightforward, helpful way, like really beautiful. I'll pin it to the top of the room. His tweet thread that he did, where he explains, shows the receipts and the facts and the data of what really has gone on, despite what all the headlines that the journalists are trying to make out of it. And he says, there was, since Saturday, we've been focusing on addressing the surge in hateful conduct on Twitter. We made measurable progress, removing more than 1,500 accounts and reducing impressions on this content to nearly zero. Here's the latest on our work and what's next. And then shows the charts of the data, and which is just really cool to see. And it feels like you're in a meeting with him at Twitter, and you just got asked, hey, Yoel, did you see this headline accusing Twitter of being filled with hate speech now? And he's like, okay, I'll give you a presentation after lunch. And then he whips it together and he goes into the meeting and he shows his slides and he says, here's what we're doing. And beautiful. That's brilliant. This is irrefutable. This is sort of God's truthiness that even his critics are complimenting him on in response to his tweet thread, saying like, yeah, he's just receiving a lot of well-deserved praise for his explanation of what's going on with the hate speech that they've essentially addressed. So put to bed. So the new Bloomberg article essentially is a bit too little too late after the fact. It's all sort of been addressed and exposed in a very refreshingly transparent way by the head of security there, in a way that maybe he's done that stuff before, and I wasn't aware of it. But I think the trust in the platform, hopefully he continues to do it in any case, because it's well done and well
Yeah,
received.
Tyler, I think this might be an interesting masterclass in transparent product management. Because you know how you sometimes have a feature request or you have something with a product using, and you submit it to customer service, and who knows when that feature will ever or that bug will ever get fixed or whatever. In this case, with Elon taking over Twitter, we're seeing people like Jason deploying surveys around. Like Evan saw one. I think Stephen King, the author, said, "Hell no, am I paying $20 a month for the blue check mark?" And then Elon was like, "What about $8 a month? You got to pay the bills." Right? So we're going to be seeing this like very transparent, but definitely experiment. It could be chaotic, I don't know how a product manager in Twitter would take all this feedback and incorporate it, but certainly it's going to be interesting to watch and see how that pans out.
Okay. So next up is from
Just for
Axios. They
context,
say, go ahead.
Stephen King wanted to be paid. He didn't want to pay $20, or he didn't reply to the $8 reply. He wants to be paid because he's Stephen King and he contributes content. So,
You know
how does
what?
a product manager make that decision?
You know what? He has a point. He's got a point. And you know what? I would wager heavily that Elon would agree that Stephen has a point. That people should be able to monetize on Twitter. People should be able to monetize on social networks. Social networks have evolved in the past 15, 20 years from being, you provide everything for free and your data, to table stakes is you should be able to monetize. And YouTube, I think, deserves more credit than anybody for creating wealthy content creators. And it's leaving all the other social networks scratching their what's, thinking, how do we, what's happening is TikTok is starting to do the same. So here it comes. You have to start monetizing as a social network, or you're going to get left behind, and they're going to move to alternatives where they can monetize. So, and by the way, Zuby responded to Elon when Elon said, now that the deal had gone down on Friday, and Zuby said, how about allowing us content creators to earn from our tweeting activity and whatever. And Elon said, absolutely. And Stephen King, most of all, my goodness, if Stephen King could release small novellas, in the form of like, I think they called review, which is their long. There's a couple of different longer form options for creating longer form content within the Twitter ecosystem that he could sell directly to people. It could be a tweet, and inside the tweet, there's a little clickable. There's the beginning of a story, and to continue, you read it, you pay, I don't know, $1.99, and you get access to this Stephen King short story. I'm not even the world's biggest Stephen King fan, and I would probably do that. Anywho, the idea that Twitter's on the brink of being able to do video, longer form video, and Twitter does have an ad network. You combine those two things, you're going head to head with YouTube. They have Vine. They can go. They can reinstitute, rejuvenate, or bring back from the dead Vine, which is not so terribly dissimilar from TikTok. And then you're going head to head with TikTok, and they have an ad network, and they could bundle that ad network into that, and on and on and on. And they have you could do podcasting, longer form audio in Twitter, where you could listen to it in a SoundCloud kind of a way. And you have something better. There's something truly important to state here, which is SoundCloud is fantastic, and Spotify is fantastic. And what I mean by this is it's long form audio, and YouTube is fantastic. All three of those work perfectly well for long form audio content, aka podcasts, right? Everyone would agree with that. YouTube, you can do podcasting. Spotify, you can do podcasting, and SoundCloud, you can do podcasting. However, I'm hearing an echo. The
of the election is to have Donald Trump on the ballot. They want Joe Biden.
Hold on, Francine. So what's truly fantastic is Twitter can do all those things plus something they critically cannot do, which is somebody can tweet that content, like Stephen King can read a chapter of one of his upcoming novels as a long-form audio clip of 30 minutes. I can quote tweet him, right? Share that to my audience that I've built on Twitter over a decade, and specifically to a particular point or phrase in the 30-minute audio clip. And now here's where it gets crazy. I've just shared his content with my following in a way that you can't do on SoundCloud or Spotify or really on YouTube. That's the huge difference. But there's more. Why shouldn't I be able to, when I retweet Stephen King's content, which is for sale, whether it's an audiobook or a textbook or a book in written form or in audio form or whatever, and I'm tweeting that content, couldn't I get a cut of the sale? And the answer is, of course I could. And so could Saudamini and Cheryl retweet it. And then if somebody makes the purchase through them, one of their followers, could Twitter then, essentially what Twitter would have to do, it's not complicated to do this, it would have to automatically create an affiliate link for each person who retweets the original content or product that's for sale. So anything can be for sale on Twitter. It can be content, digital content, products, services. And if I retweet it, and then Robert, and then David, and then Dr. Francine, and Monica, and Nerv, and we all retweet it, our retweets are uniquely individual. They all have a unique URL that's dynamically generated in real time, so that when my audience clicks my link and makes the purchase, I get the commission. I get the kickback. That can be doable. And now you've built the closest thing to what exists in real life online that has ever existed thus far. And that's where Twitter has something, what it currently is now, what the graph, the interest graph that it has now can be monetized in a very incredible way, in the way that I'm describing, because it's based on people and their interests. It's the interest graph, and the interest graph can be, when applied to commerce and content consumption patterns, it can be highly monetizable, especially if people have an incentive to not just create content, but to share the content. You don't get jack diddly squat for sharing the YouTube content or the Spotify content or the SoundCloud or anyone's content. You get paid for creating the content. That's great. We got there. We're now there in 2022. People are being paid to create content. We are not yet at the point where we are going to be paid to share the content with our audience generally. But Twitter uniquely is positioned to enable that. And that's a huge opportunity, ridiculously huge opportunity. So the next story is Elon Musk, and it's from Axios, and they say they have sources. By the way, the next story is from CNBC, and they have sources. So note, the top three stories today are Bloomberg has sources at Twitter, Axios has sources at Twitter, CNBC has sources at Twitter. There's a little too many sources at Twitter at the moment. Anyway, Axios' sources at Twitter say that Elon Musk told Twitter engineers to work on a Vine reboot, that's the right word I was looking for, that may be ready by the end of 2022. That's in 8 weeks. And by the way, 2 of those weeks are vacation. So make it 6 weeks. You've got 6 weeks to reboot Vine. This is, baptism by fire part 2. Assuming that they get yesterday's top story, which was that Twitter engineers are being told they got to have identity verification working by next week. Now they've got to get Vine rebooted within the next 6 or so weeks, and that's going to shake out the people who don't actually really want to work there. Work there with a capital WORK, all caps, bold italicized. Which, by the way, that's the only way Elon knows how to do things. I can assure you, Tesla is not full of, and space, nor is SpaceX full of people who don't actually want to work. Those companies are uniquely full of doers. A lot, and there's no room for people who aren't doers at those companies. They just, it doesn't work. They don't last.
They're all worker bees, basically. Some of the hardest working people I've ever seen.
Elon is allergic to people who aren't that way. So anyone at Twitter who got a little comfortable over the past decade, who thinks they're going to be able to fly under the radar are very sorely mistaken, because he can that is his kryptonite, and he will eradicate that from the premises sooner or later, and it'll be sooner. Somebody wanted to jump in before we go to the CNBC story.
Yeah, I do. I think that there are not that many ways to get efficiency out of the system. So I think when you say these are the people who really want to work there versus not really want to work there, is that another way of saying these are the people who are okay not having a life?